The next section was called History. And it said, it would be helpful to have a short overview of Egypt and Sudan history. Now, that's a tall order, you know. But let's just say this, that when I use the word history, in fact, to describe a chronological sequence of likely interconnected societies. So I don't confine the word history to the period of writing, which has been common in Western discourse at all. So when we talk about early history, let's start with the period of food production, otherwise called the Neolithic in some places, although that's not a word we always use now. And so we have an early Neolithic culture in the 6th millennium and 5th millennia in the Sudan, and as well as in Egypt. We have earlier evidence, perhaps, of domesticated cattle or cattle under domestication in the Sahara Desert. We have a series of cultures in the Sahara that clearly indicate, based on their tool types and their pottery, that they may be antecedent, that they may be ancestral to the cultures in the Nile Valley. So one of the early cultures in Nubia, for example, we'll talk about Nubia first, is the A group culture, which was a Neolithic culture, food producing. A group Nubia may, in fact, or seems to have had a relationship with the Naqada period cultures in Egypt. They may actually have a common root and a common origin. By the end of the A group, we have kingdoms. We have the kingdom of Kustu, where we have a white crown scene. We also have that in Naqada 3 cultures in Egypt as well. At one time, some thought it was a simple diffusion of this idea from one direction to the other, but clearly they were all a part of a common matrix, and that's only been demonstrated even more and more by certain archaeologists. Later on in Nubia, you have a culture that's been called the C group. Down in the Sudan, simultaneously with that culture, you have the emergence of the core of what would later be the kingdom, the Kush Empire, or the Kush state, and the Napatan kingdom, that eventually, many years later, comes to occupy the throne of Egypt. At other moments in time, the Egyptians actually occupied Nubia. Later on, Nubia gains its autonomy again, or the Egyptians leave for whatever reason. You have a period called the Meroitic period, and then the Christian period, and then the Islamic period in Nubia. In Egypt itself, we have an early Neolithic period followed by commonly what's called the pre-dynastic period. That in turn is followed by the early dynastic period, which leads to the Old Kingdom, then the Middle Kingdom, and then the New Kingdom, punctuated by some periods of unrest called intermediate periods. After the New Kingdom, we have something called the Late Period, and in the Late Period is the period of more invasions from without, including the Greeks, the Romans, and I guess you could include the conquest or the restorationist perspective of the Nubian pharaohs who came in the 25th dynasty as a part of the Late Period. The big difference between them and people like the Persians and other people that came from the Near East and Europe is that the Kushites saw themselves as restorers of an ancient Egyptian past. They saw themselves as unifiers and restorers of Nile Valley culture.